I'm a detective, Verone. You do anything to me, like the whole force is gonna be on your ass in a minute.
Shut your mouth. Fat piece of shit.
Stop right now. Right. What the hell is it?
Sit down.
You regret this. Just stop right now.
Once the bucket gets hot enough, Detective, the rat is gonna want out. The only direction it can go is south. Hold that.
Get it off me! I'll forget it ever
Shut
happened.
up. Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 176 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca, and as always joined by my fellow co-drivers Chris and Dave. How are you both?
Good evening, folks.
I'm fine, thanks, and I'm going to just to warn everyone that I will be addressing everyone as bro.
Bro or cuz?
Oh, bruh, a couple of times. There was a few dudes. There weren't as many dudes as I remember, but far more bros.
Literally, it's one of those good movies where you count how many times they go bro and you can get crunk.
I felt like I was hearing it every other like line of dialogue. It just felt like. I know it is.
And we will be making love between every section of this podcast, so bear with us.
Speak for yourself.
We just want to get it right. Yeah.
Oh my god.
So what are we covering tonight?
This was a film.
This was a film.
This was a film. That's my review. Yes, so tonight we are reviewing Too Fast, Too Furious, starring nobody who was in the previous film, for the most part.
Except
one man. Anyway, so yeah, starring Paul Walker, Tyrese Gibson, Eva Mendes, Devon Aoki, Cole Hauser, and James Remar. Original music by David Arnold? Script by Gary Scott Thompson, Michael Brunt, Derek Haas, and directed by the late, great John Singleton, and released in 2002.
Great's pushing it.
Mind-boggling. I find that fact mind-boggling.
Well, I saw Boys in the Hood, I think, when it wasn't long out. Somebody, literally pirated a VHS. That's how long ago it was. And I don't really remember it, but it's very well thought of. And you look at his filmography thereafter, and it's not very good. It's almost like he debuted with his best work. In fact, it isn't almost like he debuted with his best work. And he's one of those, he could have ended up with not the same career, but, like a Quentin Tarantino, where they make a fairly young debut and go on to have quite a storied career and people looking forward to their next releases. And I don't think he had that. There are shots in this film that are genuinely awful. The close-up on eyes is almost funny.
It's used to kind of unintentional comic effect.
Well, I was watching it and I kept thinking, what is this reminding me of? This is playing like a comedy film. Then I realised that it's actually the bit where the two leads in Planes, Trains and Automobiles, cars about to go between two trucks.
Oh,
Get a close-up of their eyes as they suddenly realise what's about to happen and completely shit themselves.
Maybe there's some unconscious reference.
I don't know. It's not very good anyway. But anyway, so yes. So do we talk about who made this and who? Yeah. Music by David Arnold, which I didn't know.
No, original music, when and where it can be heard. One thing in this film, if there isn't a lot of diegetic music, for example, one thing I did like about this scene, this is not casting any shade on Arnold at all, but obviously during the race scenes, there isn't a lot of music that kind of underscores it. It's very, we sort of hear they're changing the gears, engine revving, tyres squealing, that sort of thing. So the actual cars themselves become, the noise that they're making becomes the score, becomes the music, which I think is a nice touch.
It's also the fact that everything they do in the car gets a close-up.
Yeah.
I would just, if it was me, I would have been thrown in them going to the glove box for a mint.
But they'll do it in a slow-mo, sexy way to make it look appealing.
Yeah, my history with this film, not much. I've seen it once before this time, and then I've seen it twice here because we've had a slight delay recording this. We're recording this late in a week, and we're going to keep our Sunday slot, we hope, anyway, for the next one. So we're recording about 5 days after we normally would, so I did watch it again a couple of days ago. I went to see 6 in 2013, bought the box set. This was second in that box set, obviously. So I watched it once with mounting horror, because every other sentence was bro. We'll get into it, but like Brian O'Connor is not the same character in this film.
No, it's completely different.
Tej and Roman are different characters than they'll become, because they largely become comic relief hereafter, whereas like Roman in this film is kind of the
he's toned down than he is in the other films.
He's kind of, I mean, he has a few whoopy kind of moments where he's laying on a bit, but generally speaking, he's kind of the chip on the shoulder loner, actually, before he reminds himself that he loves Brian. And they call each other
in love.
the other sentence, yeah, and then they make love. Yeah, but they're very different characters from what's coming anyway. Yeah, that's all I can really say. So that's my history with this film. I watched it once before the last 10 days. I've watched it twice. I hated it on first viewing. I got through it okay on these. It's not good, but we'll go into sort of my opening thoughts in a bit. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think I must have watched this on video at the time, and it was just very much like fine, whatever, probably never sit and watch it again. But here we are.
Well, then you met us.
So yeah, it's always weird looking back on this franchise, because you think it really finds its feet in a couple of films' time. You could sort of say next week's probably the start of it. You could debate that. I don't know, but
we shall. We shall debate it.
We shall, yes. But yeah, it was kind of odd, because the things I took away from this film, I mean, obviously, it's all very perfunctory. I mean, it's fine. I wasn't bored by it particularly, but it was just very much like, so what? And very, very early 2000s, even more early 2000s than the last film.
It really is, isn't it? I got that same vibe as well. I was like, wow, this. It's dated in that way.
It's more dated than the last film. I mean,
it really is.
Firstly, Eva Mendes
like the music,
being a
the
thing.
fashion, the attitudes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Eva Mendes being a thing. Although for a period they don't look that alike, but I used to get her and Jennifer Esposito a bit mixed up sometimes. But yeah, Eva Mendes in this film. But also, this is post me moving back to my hometown after like quite a few years away, and that still feels like modern era, if you like. And then you watch this, and the sort of excitement over incredibly garish looking cars is still there. It's got a bit of a sort of Grand Theft Auto Vice City vibe to it in places. That's probably deliberate, because Vice City's based on Miami anyway.
Yeah, those sort of games were definitely really coming up in popularity since the 90s and 2000s as well. So.
Bear in mind, Vice City is set in the 80s and this isn't, but it's just...
No, but you've still got that general kind of look and attitude as well.
Yeah,
you mentioned the garage cars as well. Wait till next week.
The underlighting on the cars as well, and that sort of thing. Those are sort of things you can get put on your cars in GTA and things like that. I don't know about Vice City, but certainly like 5 you could. So, yeah, and some of the people in this that didn't go on to be a thing. I mean, Devon Aoki is not a big star now. She is really, really not Holly Valance, isn't she?
She does look a bit like Holly Valance, so we'll call her not Holly Valance.
James Remar went through the Agent Markham. He went through a few years of turning up in stuff. He was in Sex and the City for a while.
He tends to get kind of pigeonholed as kind of either like policemen or government agents or kind of authority figures or things like that. He tends to be
he either plays a bad guy or he plays a good guy with a bad side.
Yeah, that's it. He's a corrupt cop, but generally in kind of figures of authority. I think he was in the Psycho remake as the cop right at the start, and he's fantastic. But you generally find him as sort of corrupt cop or some kind of policeman.
Yeah, Mark Boone Jr., obviously Detective Whitworth. This is only a couple of years before he was in Batman Begins.
Of course, I was thinking where have I seen him before?
Yeah, so he was the corrupt. He was a corrupt cop in that. Where are they? Yeah,
that is what he sounds like.
That was him being spoken to by Batman as they were having a quiet chat.
His character just shows up like, randomly out there. It's like, oh, and here's... Do you know what I mean?
And he's playing the same character, really. This is that character in this film. I got to remind myself of the character's name in Batman Begins because it is a comic book name. It is the same name that you see on a slightly different character. Flass, that's it. So yeah, it's just dated incredibly. Paul Walker is still not kind of grown into his man's form.
They haven't settled into his character yet, have they?
He's still got he's still very, very youthful at this stage. And he's playing a different character, and maybe we go through that in opening thoughts, I suppose. But Becca, did you see this at the time? Did you see it in recent years?
Don't really have a memory of going to see this one at the cinema. Unfortunately, I might have done. I honestly couldn't tell you.
I do wonder how much the title of the film cost them in money, because I think I'd have been embarrassed going up to the counter in the cinema and saying "Too Fast, Too Furious." Too
Fast, Too Furious, dude. No, well, I'd say dating that petrolhead dude at the time, I probably did get dragged along to go and see it. Compared to like the later films where I'd go and see them with my friends as a kind of like ironic, go and see them ironically, just for the crazy stunts, really. But yeah, I think I probably caught this movie mid 2000s, and again, haven't seen it since. Watched it a few times for this today, so yeah, fairly kind of like loose history with this film. But it's interesting to just say look back on these films that were kind of made at the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and kind of look at how like film techniques have changed, especially in the series along the years, attitudes to women, things like that, and just kind of same as you, Chris. I was struck by how very early 2000s this film is. And it's a way of putting it. But yeah, in terms of my history of this film, I might have seen it on release, forgot about it. Haven't really seen it since, and there it is.
The shot where Brian and Roman are introduced to their cars, and I can't, in my head there's covers on these cars. I can't remember if there are or not, but the covers are pulled off this car, and the pair of them masturbate each other, with excitement. But the cars,
there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of
the camera pans back or whatever, and you see the two cars, and they are the most garish pieces of kit fucking ever. All they're missing is like a fucking phoenix on the hood or something, or flame effects.
I'm sure back in the day they looked the shiz. They looked
I don't
really
know.
good.
Did these look good at the time? I don't know. But yeah, it's a very colourful film as a result.
Colourful is the right word.
Okay, opening thoughts from me. I will go into it in a minute, but I think you can see almost an alternate history of this series, because the first film was LA, Vin Diesel as kind of the lead. I suppose Brian is our point of view character, but it's a Vin Diesel film really when you look back at it. And the second film is like there's a Link character that then goes to a different city, and then the third film is Tokyo, and you could have seen a version of this series with increasingly diminishing returns of them sort of having a different crew in a different city each time with a Link character if they could get one. This is really, really perfunctory. It is more than the last film, all about the car chases. The bit of them having to like bring down a drug dealer or whatever he is neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. You just got to put them in a situation where they can have a bit of like sparky wordplay, a bit of sexual tension, and some car chases. The change of location is an odd one in that I've never been to Miami, but I didn't feel like it used its location. In that when I rewatched the film, that was the first I had not remembered this was set in Miami. And it doesn't stand out visually that much from the first film. The characters are all really different, and we'll get into it as we go along. Some of that is they haven't found their characters yet, but there's not really an excuse with Brian. He's already had a film, so the way he's a degree more immature and excitable and blokey in British terms in this film.
He's very much a lad, isn't he? I think
his IQ's lower. His obsession with cars is greater. And the relationship with Roman is almost hilarious, partly because of the sexual tension I'll make fun of all the way through the show, but also because as we go on, Roman and Tej become a thing, really. They're the sort of the grouping and the comic relief and the sparky pair. So it reminds me of the first few days at university where everyone like makes new friends, and about 3 days later all the groups like reorganize as you realize you're hanging around with totally the wrong people for you.
Yeah.
This is a freshers week lineup,
Yeah, it's pretty much like First Week movie, isn't it? Pretty much.
So it's really strange. It's unbelievably dated. Some scenes more than other, and I don't know if that's film stock or what. There's a couple of effects that look processed, but they're okay. But the scene where Mark Boone is threatened, with the rat in the bin.
Oh, I had to look away.
Something about the way that is coloured. It looks decades old. But
that scene really jumped out at me. I kind of thought, did they film this ages ago? But yeah, there's the two kind of scenes there were probably the rat scene and then the big scene, massive stunt scene at the end. I kind of thought, hasn't dated well. No,
the only other thing I think I can think of to say is that it reminded me, not in a good way, of Death Proof. In the second chase in Death Proof, you had the woman driving the car, whose name escapes me, constantly shit-talking while she was driving to no one in particular. And this film's got a lot of that. And I don't know what they're going for. I don't know if they...
No, there's quite a lot of dialogue in this movie.
I don't know if they assume some of the sort of mouth breathers in the audience will be like, yeah, get them. I don't know what it is, because this is meant for a wide release and a wide audience, and I felt like, just shut up, please, guys. You know what I mean? There's nothing as tense as the car chase at the end of the first film, where they're trying to disengage the guy whose arm's caught and all that sort of stuff. The plot is not as interesting, even though DVD players is not the most inspiring thing in the world. It did sort of feel like it had some emotional stakes. This really doesn't. Who cares if they succeed or not, to be honest? Because this isn't... By the end of this, you could say we've had 3.5, 4 hours with Brian, but we haven't really, because it's a different Brian, and it will be a different Brian again as we go forward.
Many iterations of Brian.
Yeah, it's kind of... It's a
Many
new
Lives of
character
Brian.
played by the same guy.
That's it. Many Lives of Brian.
It's like an anthology show. Like American Crime Story or something, where you get all the same cast but haven't played different people. But it just so happens his character is also called Brian O'Connor in this. The romantic relationship in the last film is dropped. His boss at the Miami, his former boss at the Miami Police Department is an FBI agent now. I don't know how that works.
No.
It's a bit of a mess, really. But I got through it. It's not too long. What about you guys?
Becca, what do you think?
It's a film. That's my one line review. It's a film.
It's under 2 hours.
It's fast. Actually, I was just going through to see if I can find it. I found a review from Roger Ebert, for example. So he basically complains that how it's brainless, how the plot is totally crazy. And then he says, "Does it sound like I'm complaining? I'm not complaining. I'm grinning. Too Fast, Too Furious as a movie game. Nope. As a video game crossed with a buddy movie, a bad cop, good cop movie, Miami drug lord movie, a chase movie, and a comedy. It doesn't have a brain in its head, but it's made with skill and style, and boy, is it fast and furious." I think that I would go along with that, actually. I mean, all these films, quality does vary in terms of script characterization, but the cars and the relationship between Paul Walker and whoever his bro is, it's very much first and foremost key to this series, and then later on it kind of ramped up with the stunts. But these films, like I say, no matter the quality, they look good, they sound good. There is always quality, it's varying, but it's all about the relationships between the characters, and it's just I think that I was struggling to sum up how I feel about it other than it as a film, but I would agree with the Roger Ebert review there that they're entertaining at the end of the day. So, and that's all I have to say on that matter.
I mean, I will add that
I'm afraid.
When I rewatched them all, this was my least favourite on first watch, 7 years ago. This was the one that really stood out and did my tits in. I think it was bro every 2 fucking seconds that you could have made in.
A big drinking film, every time they say brat, because
you would die.
You'd have a drink and then you'd collapse at the end.
We haven't got to the My Family era yet of this film series. But yeah,
Coming soon.
Coming soon, Chris.
Yeah, it was...
Not coming soon, Chris. That's not
coming soon.
Yeah.
You just sit down.
Back it up and take it away with
you. Yeah, this very much felt... What's the word I'm trying to think of here? Yeah, I think it is exactly what it is. It's like you had a hit movie and you want to make a franchise, but you don't have everyone else on board, so you kind of try to reinvent what's there. So basically you have you have basically not Vin Diesel, but it involves, you have to sort of create that sort of same sort of relationship, but because
You got to pull it out your ass.
but because not Vin Diesel is a newbie, therefore the one who was like the non-expert all suddenly is the expert. I mean, Brian in this film, since going, he's now he's almost got like the legendary status that Toretto had, and he's like, oh my god, Brian O'Connor's here, and he's almost like on like hiding, but still doing like sort of street races, and is
he's
now
living in a ship tip as well.
He's been elevated.
So it is a different Brian. I mean, he's a bit cockier in this film as well. I think that's what it is. I'm not, the amount of times he sort of he's
when
constantly
he wins, he really fucking rubs it in, doesn't he?
He really does. That's quite annoying.
I mean, we'll get into it. The opening scene is like, one of the guys. They established that he needs a bit of money, and he just comes in, goes like ups the winnings, and goes like, and then wins it. He goes soz. Do you know what I mean? It feels a bit. You're a bit of a dick, really, Brian, aren't you?
He's a bit of a knob.
I mean, you were invited here, just on last second. You turn up and go like, actually, you know what? Everyone pay up more money because it's just anyway.
They do at least give the impression in this film, I will say, that there's some skill in the driving. In the first film, it just seemed to be literally a drag race, which to the untrained eye, and we admit untrained eyes, just looks like put your foot down and go for it, and just press that button at the right time. Whereas this was like a proper race. You see the DNA of this in races like around London in 6 and stuff like that.
Yeah, you get a little bit more like trying to like outmaneuver and overtake people, don't you? And kind of like that, don't you? There's a little bit more in there, but I guess. But generally, it just feels a little bit limp, a little bit perfunctory. So what? And yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things I did find was like you, Dave. My first thought this isn't the same Roman Pearce that's in the newer one, should we say? But he's a little bit more serious.
Comic relief, and he plays up in the later films. I mean, he does whatever's required of him, but there's always like a faint stream of cowardice running through him as well.
Yeah.
Later on, whereas here he's like odd as fuck.
Well, there is a little bit of, I can see the transition a little bit here because it's the little things like the fact that he is a bit of a mouth, and he opens his mouth like before and I like sort of like the idea that it's just that he's got high metabolism, so he's always eating, which they continue on even more in the film. So I thought, so they have kind of stuck to his character. It's just that here he's just got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to something like 7, they'll literally use him as like distraction.
Yeah.
Go over there and just fucking talk, and everyone will look at you while we do something. So he's always been mouth, but he becomes, him and Tej will get like competitive over women and things like that. He's not. I'd be interested to see with like 4 and 5. Because I don't recall him and Brian being a big thing after this, but I suppose Brian started sleeping with Vin Diesel again. And, his wife.
Yeah, as well as.
Other flavours of the week.
Yeah. So, there was a bit of a video game feel to it. I did think of, like, GTA a couple of times. The road chases go on a bit long, definitely.
Yeah, they're definitely a bit long for this film.
Characters we don't even know, and one we've met, but is totally different here. But I think the biggest problem is I did not care about their plot. You do see a little bit of the sort of bait and switch we get in later films. Mm. There is a fake out in the final action sequence, which is done a lot better in a later film. But it's at least there. There's at least a little bit of thought in it. But I think anything I say is going to be damning it with faint praise, really. It was my least. I'll be interested to get to the next 2 weeks because when I watched the first 5, I remember really enjoying 5, and that was all. I remember being a bit bored by 4 and a bit irritated by 3 because I didn't really like the lead and just thought, what am I even watching this for? It's a direct-to-DVD spin-off. But I remember the one where I thought, this is dreadful, being this one. So I'll be really interested to see in the next couple of weeks if this still, is still bottom of my personal sort of pile.
It probably will be.
Still, should we discuss this plot sequentially?
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, bro.
Right.
There isn't much of a plot though.
I know. I've just called up the synopsis, and it's really short. I mean, they're written by the public anyway. But if you ever go to IMDb, there's normally a plot synopsis and a summary, and the summaries will be a little bit of like almost like PR type guff. This happens, that happens. Like the little sales paragraph on a film. But there'll be a synopsis underneath, and the synopses are normally quite long because it describes everything that happens in the film. This is only 1, 2, 3, 6 paragraphs, and 2 or 3 of those are very short paragraphs anyway. It's not very long at all.
That kind of tells you all you need to know, really.
Yeah. So when we first see Tej at the start of this film, it reminded me of that visual joke. It reminded me of the visual joke in the third Naked Gun film where they cut back to the 70s and Nordberg can't get through the door because of the size of his apples.
It was the style at the time, I'm sure.
It wasn't the style in 2002. It was when you watch 6 later on and you've got all the sort of the opening credits and you get shots from previous films, you do get a shot of him with this hair, but it's only in this scene.
That's a hairdo.
It's bad, isn't it?
I think
so the costumes are quite revealing.
It was Ludacris's hair at the time, probably. I'm guessing.
I wasn't familiar with his career, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it might have been his style. Oh yeah, I thought, yeah.
Because apparently,
Chris, obviously, sorry about that.
Not to probably step on fun facts or anything, but the ridge he had in mind was Ja Rule from the first film, which I'm not sure how that would have fitted in. But but yeah, the offered it to Ja Rule, and apparently he was like too big. He thought it was too big for the Fast franchise at the time.
That always makes me. That's right up there with like GoldenEye. What are they called? Who turned it down?
Oh, Ace of Base.
Ace of Base, yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah, too famous.
That's just so passé. Say Ace of Base.
Too famous for too fast.
Yeah. This'll never last as long as we will.
Yeah. So you just imagine he could actually be in quite large blockbusters now if he had he
basically films that all did like $1 billion now.
Yeah.
Great. Well done, Gabriel.
Anyway, so so we introduced to Taj, and he's setting up a drag race. Drag race? What am I talking about?
It's a race.
Yeah,
not that kind of drag race.
No,
a street race.
Yeah, a street race. Typical of Fast and Furious type thing. We have basically they need 4 races. There's only 3 there, or something like that.
Say that again, sorry.
But basically, we need 4 races, but there's only 3 cars, or something along those lines.
Right. Brilliant. And not Holly Valance is the starter. Because that's what you need. And we're supposed to. I think the implication is they're in a relationship, those two. But
a bit of a flirty relationship.
I don't think we see them after this week, do we?
No.
We don't see her. I mean,
no.
We see him obviously. All right. So he calls Brian, and Brian's like arse is still hanging out of his trousers as he's exiting the house. He's like so excited for the chance to make some money.
And it's in this sort of like, who's this Brian? It's almost like a new Bond kind of thing. It's like he's like it's like you see, it's like he's in the dark. You can't quite see him till he probably comes out of the car. And
Brian.
And I always had I've got someone. Oh, who could this be?
Yeah, everyone's always like really anticipates that. They never go, "Oh, cool, right, brilliant. Someone else is turning up. All right." It's always who, not Brian.
I would have thought some of the races would have thought, "There's no point in racing because I'm not going to beat whoever this legendary street racer is.
Yeah, who's done about 4 races in LA and just moved to Miami. It's like, come on. How would he be this famous? Right, so they have a race.
Yeah, and
That's pretty much it.
And I had a bit of a... One of the funny things I had in my mind was when I saw this was I thought of Pulp Fiction and the Wolf. He sort of said like, "Oh, like what time you need to be there? 3 minutes." And he's like, "How far is it? Oh, it's 5 minutes away. I'll get there in 2." I just had that.
Yeah. Well, it says like 27 minutes later or something. Yeah. So he gets there, and he straight away, basically, you get this long race that immediately gives us the underlighting on the cars, which is really, really garish and like tacky. But it's also got the close-ups on the eyes, and every time they close up on the eyes sort of go wide. The eyes are like...
It's very strange, isn't it?
It's almost like a double take without a double take. Like they've
and
just...
you've got the kind of fade in and out as well, the really weird fade effects, like...
Yeah, and sort of going in and out of the cars again, and the race just goes on really long. It's the first sign that, like... I remember when I do have this vague memory now of the first time I watched it thinking, oh shit, there's no plot here, is there? I.e., they've dragged out the first race so long that I don't actually think they've got a plot. Because you tend to cut with more discipline when you have something to say.
Yeah.
Not everyone's the same, but Quentin Tarantino, but like a lot are. When you see the opening action sequence and it's a load of people we don't know and one guy we sort of semi-know racing around a new city for stakes that are relatively minor, bit of cash or the car. It's like, and it goes on this long. It's like, really? But anyway, we have
an exciting bridge ending where they
yeah. Now that strikes me as rather irresponsible, in that like the damage to your car landing from up there would not be good, and yet they just put it up as a bit of a laugh. It's like the amount of money they're betting on is probably less than the damage you're going to do to your car.
Yeah.
But again, it's pressing that button at the right time every time, isn't it, to get the nitrous oxide. The effect of that in this film is quite good. It's got that kind of almost stretching light speed feel to it.
Yeah, I thought that was quite clever as well. It's done a little bit differently. It reminded me a little bit of like any sort of sci-fi movie or 2001 when he goes in that kind of like the psychedelic section. It reminds me a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Or any kind of sci-fi film where that's sort of parodied or called back to.
Yeah, so anyway, he jumps over not Holly Valance, lands and wins, and then it's like whoop.
I've got a fun fact about her coming up at the end of the show.
Whoop, dude, bro, etc.
Most of the dialogue in this film is dude, bro.
Yeah, and then the police turn up.
It's like, wait, watch it.
Yeah, it's almost like exactly what happens in the first film, isn't it?
Yeah, except it's not Eminem calling it out this time.
No.
Supposedly,
it's not. Yeah, all right. So they're then taken into he's then taken in where he's all like the moody, condemned man. He's sat there like, I'm not talking kind of thing. You got the wrong guy. And he's being offered a deal by his former boss, who's now FBI. So that's confusing. And they've got to bring an Argentinian drug lord who is just insert early 2000s villain.
He's a bit generic then, isn't he?
Oh, God, yeah.
It's basically a tan Cole Hauser, basically.
Well, I tell you who it reminds me of. I've just got to look up his name because it's suddenly gone out of my head. Julian McMahon would play a character like this. A little bit oily, somewhat good-looking, very full of themselves, fairly well off. Yeah, it's a very, very sort of Julian McMahon type of character. Julian McMahon was in Nip Tuck, and he was also Doctor Doom in the mid.
Yeah, he's quite sort of distinctive look to him, didn't he? So.
Yeah, he was the only person. He's the only person I've seen since Shatner whose hairline came over the years. He was in by the time he did the second Fantastic Four, he had more hair than he did in the first one. So, yeah,
it's getting better.
It's like that's healing nicely. So they've got to go and infiltrate this gang, and they want to team him with. Brian says, "I know a guy," and it's Roman Pearce.
Yeah. So yeah, And this is another one of those things that he do when they say, "Oh, like initially you're going to go in one of our guys," and they get the most useless waste of space to go in, and I'm like, I know it's sort of there to prove a point, but at the same time, I think I don't think the police would be that fucking thick. Like he's standing there, with like a, just to make him look extra stupid, he's got like one of those big, massive American like that 5-litre cup things. You're thinking,
yeah, the giant Slurpees.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, no, sorry, that's a bit contrived for my liking. I mean,
I just kind of thought, that's just obviously just faked. I thought, oh, God.
And of course, in reality, what would likely happen here is Brian would go, well, fair enough, I haven't got anyone else, I've only just moved here. But no, he knows someone, and they're the best of the best of the best.
Best of the best of the best.
But there's conflict.
So this is basically, was this going to basically be Vin Diesel, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course it was.
So like, not Holly Valance, not Vin Diesel.
Yeah, hopefully they'd have just have Vin Diesel play Vin Diesel, because I don't think blackface would have been a good idea.
Dun dun dun. That's not what I meant.
Hello, I'm Dominic Toretto, man.
That's not what I meant at all.
Just struck me as a funny fucking image that you just put Vin Diesel in this playing Roman Pearce, a black man. Anyway, okay. So we go to see him in what looks like a bit of a demolition derby. And he's crazy.
Yeah, because we really want to show off his driving skills by crashing into things.
It just shows how crazy he is.
Yeah, he's a loose cannon. Will Brian be able to get him under control?
Bro.
What about Agent Monica Fuentes? Will she be able to control them both? Will there be romance?
Yeah, so basically, we introduced it. We find out there's conflict. Obviously, it was because Brian's a cop. That sounds familiar. He got arrested because Brian was a cop.
Yeah.
Funny that.
This sounds familiar. Anyway,
he took to wearing blackface in prison.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So yes, this is a retell. I nearly said Riddick Bowe. Riddick Bowe was off filming the Chronicles of Riddick. No, that's not right. Vin Diesel was off doing the Chronicles of Riddick. So I think the initial plan was to have him in this film. Whether it would have still been Miami, don't know. Maybe he would have been like incarcerated there or something. I don't know. Don't know how these things work.
Apparently, he read the script and thought, "No, it's a bit rubbish. I'd rather do something else. I'd rather focus on."
Bearing in mind, the other thing he did was the Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah.
Which is really bad, and a massively egotistical film as well, and more than a bit pretentious. So yeah, the third Riddick film's great. I quite like the third Riddick film. I barely remember Pitch Black. I've seen it, but I barely remember it. But the Riddick film from like 10 years afterwards was pretty good. Yeah. So they are. He's brought in. He's on parole. So it's basically I think it's their records can be expunged.
Yeah.
If they can go in and basically get in as part of Verone's crew. Fuentes is already in there. She's already been there for a year. And it's kind of implied her and Verone are kind of in a relationship. Deep cover.
Yeah.
So
not sure of loyalties, things like that.
Yeah, that's meant to introduce doubt that is never introduced at all, really. Eva Mendes is wasted in this, isn't she?
I think for a short while, any female character is going to be on the back burner, is going to be a bit wasted, unfortunately.
I was about to say, that's 2 weeks in a row now, they're not good.
I mean...
Well, they're just not given... Sorry, Chris, to cut you up there, sorry, just saying that they're not given the material to develop, but that's just the series, one of the many downers to the series. Then we carry on, sorry to cut you up there.
No, that's fine.
Like embroidery and kittens, doesn't that count?
No, it's a very male generic series though, so I imagine it's very much like dude, bro, and the chicks are kind of there as just kind of.
Honestly, if the three of them had a threesome, they wouldn't even fucking notice she was there.
No, it is one big loving.
Yeah.
pretty much.
Oh yeah, there you are.
Well, it is. No, I think as much as I don't like it, I mean, it is. I'll rephrase that. Yeah, as much as like you said, this series is very male centric. But that's just the nature of it. But it is very much like a bromance. It is pretty much about like central male characters and their relationship. And Davey made a joke about kind of looking at it as if they're in a relationship. I think there's merits to that. It is very much like a bromance of that kind of style. But just women just happen to be on the side, as that's just how it is in the industry in this kind of film that is very testosterone fueled.
Yeah, that's true. So about time we had another car chase, isn't it?
Yeah, we've gone for a long time without any car chases. Let's have another one.
It's been 4 or 5 minutes. Come on.
This is about cars. Shocking.
This film's really about cars, though. Every time they get a new car, they're really excited by it. Whereas I'm looking at it going, Christ, that's a garish mess. There is a 1970s Dodge Challenger in it that I like the look of, to be fair.
Yeah, you do see some nice muscle cars.
That's later in the film. Yeah, that that's when they sort of step onto the set of like it becomes Starsky and Hutch briefly.
But does this film kind of follow in the tradition of having the not Vin Diesel character drive all the muscle cars and having like Paul Walker and other supporting characters drive like foreign cars, especially when we get to Japan next week?
Yeah, well, he drives the actually Roman drives the convertible, doesn't he? In this film?
Yeah, which is why he doesn't drive Eva Mendes, because he got the convertible.
Oh, that's true.
All right, fair enough.
No,
didn't think of that. Good shot.
No, yeah. So
they have to compete to be hired by Verone.
Yes, but before that, we have the drive and stare, which, in hindsight, in what happened to Paul Walker in real life, felt a little bit odd.
Remind me.
Because he famously died in the car crash. You have a scene where he's basically sort of just staring at Eva Mendes to like sort of show it off while driving really, really fast.
Yeah. If you look at the circumstance, he wasn't driving when he died, but they were doing an outrageous speed in a built-up area, and basically, when the car crashed, they couldn't get him out of it. He basically died of asphyxiation and his injuries. So yeah, whenever you see that sort of slight jerking off over the cars, I just think, was there a little bit of that in him in real life? It doesn't mean he deserved what happened to him, by the way. It's not what I'm saying at all. But what happened, I think, put it this way, they were doing over 90 in like a 30 zone or something along those lines. And there's never really a good reason to be doing that, is there? So, yeah. But then they've got to basically have this kind of race to get hired by him. How does this race go? I can't remember. They've got to go and get a package or something, haven't they?
Yeah, so they got like they got like teams, but how they sort of organise those teams, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah,
clear.
They have to go to like this warehouse and collect the package. Essentially, just told it's in this car. And it's presumed that I'm not sure they mentioned it's in the glove compartment, but anyway, it's like just go first team to come back with it gets the job, and so off they go. So we have a bit of a chase.
It's just a set piece in order to advance a plot. Yeah, they've got to compete for that guy's like affections, if you like, and they win, but it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to do that
against the most Italian-looking men on earth.
Yes, I'm only surprised they weren't busy making those sort of hand signals Italians make rather than holding the wheel. Cooking pasta in the glove compartment. Yeah. Then what? So they then meet up with him. They're given a cigar and they're told they've got a job.
Yeah. And
they're all like, bro, dude.
No
That's
way.
generally the reaction.
And then they make love.
So then they go meet Taj and not Holly Valance.
Yeah, he sorted his hair out this time.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there, but he now looks like vaguely how we are used to seeing him in more recent years. Then what?
they figure out the cars have been given by the cops. They're tracking them, and then so they're a bit like, bummer, dude. And then they found out that that the drug dealers' men are following them as well. So
thankfully, they know like an absolute electronics wizard.
Yes.
This is the most, some backstreet guy, and he says this is the most advanced thing I've ever seen. Then it's like, I got you though. It's like,
yeah,
all right. Great.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the series is going to be just like that as we get to the good ones. So
yeah, no, I know. They are all the world leaders at what they do, whatever they do. I mean, when you see what Tej does in this film, and you realise later in the film he's like a world-class computer hacker and stuff, it's like these guys have taken some night courses. I'm convinced. And Dom's amazing at the greatest driver in the world, and so was Paul Walker. They just happened to meet the two greatest drivers in the world, and it turns out like Roman's really good as well.
Yeah.
So awesome.
And they're all really good drivers, and then that's what makes them perfect candidates to take on the terrorists. Yeah. Yeah. So you don't need to scramble the military when they're around in downtown LA. No.
We'll find out later.
No, that's the criteria. Can you drive?
You basically just need them and The Rock. That's what.
Yeah. Because The Rock's good at lifting things. So I think you've got every skill set covered there.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Which film was it? And he literally sweats his way through the film. I don't know what's going on with him. He's just really, really hot physically.
I think it might be 5.
Not in a sexiness kind of way.
In
but
5, if you go,
he just sweats his way through it, and you think, oh god,
If you go and watch the Honest trailer for 5.
Okay.
When he's walking around on screen, they drop all the sound out and put like a sort of squidgy baby oil sound in.
I think I've seen that.
All the sound cuts out, and all you get is.
Seriously, he's sweating bullets the whole time. I just think,
that's
he needs a fan or something.
Sort of sprayed before he goes, the yell action, isn't he? Or whatever it is.
But he looks, it's not a good look. But he's got that physicality, but he just had a little bit like.
So anyway, Brian and not Vin Diesel, what happens next?
So Brian and not Vin Diesel.
It's not Vin Diesel, not Oliver Hunt.
Yeah.
And
not Eminem this time.
No.
So I think they establish Roman's eating, like his fast metabolism. They make him some sort of like weird club because I've been in jail. I eat every opportunity I get because the food's shit, and it's one of those things. Plus, I've got a fast metabolism, so that explains why I don't put on weight.
Plus, my doctor said I've got a fast metabolism. How did that come up then? It's like, I don't know. Right, okay, fair enough. So just chatting, my doctor said, have some burgers.
Right. Have a burger then, why not?
Right, now, what they're trying to do in this final set piece, I don't really know. It's something to do with getting Verone's money, or taking it somewhere, or doing something with it.
Yeah.
So it's a whole big sequence where they've got to sort of get the money somewhere, but the police are sort of watching them at the same time. And Tej is trying to run interference to stop the police following them. And it's not a badly conceived sequence, although half the time I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, so basically they're playing like, we're going to get screwed either way, so they're trying to think, right, well, let's get us out of it. So they come up with an exit strategy, and they go and get some other cars.
Yeah.
So they decide, how about them Italian twats that we raced before? Let's steal their car. And of course they got better cars because they look a bit bigger and got their engines on the bonnet.
Yeah.
So obviously they're a lot more faster than their sporty, colourful.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have a race. Obviously Pearce loses. Here's one, 'cause it's kind of like a what you call a passing the baton kind of thing.
It's a relay.
Yeah.
And basically, so he has to drive one way up the road, and when he gets where he's going, the sort of second leg starts. Brian's he's driving the second leg for the lovers. Yeah, so when Roman is not winning. Sorry, Brian's enjoying Roman's behind, and
we all enjoy a bit of.
Blimey, very sexy film this. Yeah, Brian wins from being in second place. Yes, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
So they win a couple of extra cars, which I'm sure will have no plot use whatsoever.
No. Absolutely none.
I just love the idea that it's that simple. Like, you just go, we need another couple of cars for this. Well, let's just pop out and win them.
Well, they're connected, they know the right people. And of course they can drive, so.
Well, yeah, I'm not imagining they're like me. Like, I just pop into town and go, would you like to compete with me for your car? But
Yes, please.
It's still very convenient.
It was very handy. It was a lot kind of. You've got to suspend your disbelief, really, haven't you, a little bit?
So they've got to outdrive the cops and get this cash. It's like several bags of it to do this drug deal. And it goes on a really long time. But it's reasonably tense. There's bits where they look in trouble and stuff like that. Roman has used a sort of homemade ejector seat.
That's my favourite part of the film.
Yeah. Well, 'cause it's most Bond-like.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I really enjoyed it. I think Carl House's character, he's pretty much a Bond villain. Like, he's very kind of slimy, he's quite smooth. He just lives himself a little bit. He's got this huge mansion, with all these kind of really tough henchmen. And he's kind of like a typical kind of slimy 80s style Bond villain. So I kind of thought, I did kind of love those Bond vibes. That was the high point for me, the ejector seat. I thought, yes, so much fun.
Yeah, but
anyway, sorry.
It's not the same if some old out of touch guy who's reading off idiot boards doesn't give it to them.
No.
Pay attention.
Pay attention. Bro.
Bro. Pay attention, bro. I call it a ghetto blaster.
Ghetto blaster. I don't know where he says that. He's like, ghetto blaster.
Oh, he loves it.
Now listen here, bruv.
Pay attention, bro.
Yeah.
I'm down with it, man. But listen here.
So, doing those hand gestures.
So you'll be keeping it real in Florida. With this high-performance automobile.
Now do watch your back. I don't want to see any of this expensive equipment get wrecked.
Well, there was actually a line in the film, bring it back in one piece towards the end of the movie, and I was like, aha!
Aha!
Essentially a Bond film.
Yes. When you said watch your back, I thought you meant just because, not Vin Diesel will be in like Flynn. Yeah, okay. So this race is okay.
Yeah. So the race for the car.
Yeah, eh?
The race for the car. For the cars.
Well, no, the race for the cars is fuck all. It's nothing. But the actual main race that leads on to is okay. It's all right. It goes on a very long time. It's got several sort of sections to it. It keeps cutting back for they're being watched by the police, but then interference is being run, and when they're pulled over, but they're by sort of the crooked police run by sort of Whitworth. Mm-hmm. They've changed the car over, which is very like a bait and switch in 5, though if not the same. I don't know what else I want to say more about it, except at the end that they've stolen some money and they're like, "I love you, bro," and then they make love. Credits.
I'm just surprised that they managed to get they're popular enough to get all those people essentially getting arrested by the police for because Taj and not Harley Vance get arrested, or assumably they just get a bit of a slap on the wrist or whatever.
Yeah, that would be it. You're not who we're looking for.
But clearly,
I know my tags are out of date. In other words, his license or his tax or whatever's out of date. That's the joke. That's why they've sent all those police after him, which it isn't, of course.
But it just seems like no, that wouldn't happen. You collaborated with. Others or obstructed justice.
You've rather perverted what was supposed to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, you
anyway,
can't go like, oh, I know nothing about this.
But when and the other thing is where they drive they eventually, like, Verone gets away on like a boat with Eva Mendes, who, you know, he sort of knows is involved with Brian somehow. I haven't seen the film twice in the last few days. I'm still not sure if they have sex or she just happens to be there. But anyway, so Brian drives the car off a bank onto the back of the ship, which is just on the back of the yacht, which is incredibly lucky timing. Also incredibly dangerous because you don't know where you're going to land on it and who's on top of it. I mean, if he just splatted Eva Mendes, that would have been like, really? You got the typical, you're not going to do this, are you? It's a really silly plan and a really silly ending to the film. But they win, they've got the money, they give it back to the police, they have a manly handshake, but one of those sort of cooler ones. And
it's a secret bro handshake.
I know. And then they wander off going, you know, we'll be lovers forever and we're bestest pals and I wish you were Vin Diesel. and I've got some money, so have I. Look at my trousers. And then they smile lovingly at each other and then they
made love.
And then they make love credits.
I think we watched a different film than everybody
I think the post-credit scene would have been like one of them finishing in the other. It's just a thought.
but which one though?
Oh, I don't know. If you're gay and have a view on which one of them's the bottom, write to us and expect us to talk at gmail.com.
It's basically a bromance.
Yeah, if that's meant to be Vin Diesel, he'd have been in charge, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But then it's Roman, so I don't know. Write to us. Let us know what you think. Which one bums who? Anyway, for more progressive chat, join us next week.
Let's move on, shall we?
As we've talked through it, there's nothing here, is there?
No, because it is just car chases and
the
Miami.
plot's not interesting. The characters aren't the characters. The homoeroticism's funny. I don't care really.
I feel like I'm missing something because obviously I was doing some. I mean, obviously I'm missing something. I'm trying to do some reading around this film. Obviously you've got, quite a strong cast and sort of writing team, kind of like middle of the road. But then you've got. I'm struggling to connect the two together. Obviously, John Singleton is like legendary director. You know, really important.
I think you've misused the word. I don't think he's a legend at all. I think he did one good film.
Really important films, but at the same time, it looks good. It's very stylish. But as I say, I wonder if I am missing something because obviously in like recent, probably I would say like mid 2000s, there was an argument this is actually kind of quite underrated, but I'm struggling to see why. I'm so sorry for any fans out there who are listening are going, what the fuck are they on about?
I think it's bordering on a parody film.
I do kind of struggle.
We're joking about it because there is no subtext. Those two men are sexually interested in each other. It's a joke. Yeah. But it's a joke born out of the fact that every time they look at each other, it lingers. They play up we're lifelong brothers like way too much. It's done it in both of the first two films. It's called Too Fast, Too Furious, for fuck's sake. I mean, that's just...
It's found that it's a sequel.
It's got silly close-ups of eyes every time something happens during a race. And you can call Singleton legendary all you want. He'll be remembered for his first film. Everything he did afterwards was shite.
What have you seen any of his his other early stuff like Higher Learning and Poetic Justice?
I've seen... Let me think. I think I've seen Higher Learning.
Was that bad? Because I've not seen that. I don't know. That was... I don't know if that seemed to be like kind of...
I don't remember it being... All I remember is Boys in the Hood was well thought of, and I know I saw that. And so he was one to sort of watch out for. So I saw a range of other things. He didn't do that many things. He only made about like... Well, I'm looking now, actually.
He did a couple of episodes of Empire as well, and what else?
Yeah, but that's
the Shaft remake.
Yeah, and it's rubbish. The
I liked it. It's quite interesting in terms of its representation of various I don't know what else to say about the various cultural layers.
It neutered Shaft. Part of the problem. It's not a very good film. I mean, the Shaft film that came out last year on Netflix is better than the 2001. Because it actually Shaft's meant to be a bit of a ladies' man and stuff like that, and the 2000 film completely neutered him. And again, like all films from that era, it's dated strangely badly.
It's got a hell of a cast though. I mean,
it's not a. I mean, like
really good
Christian Bale,
role from Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright's in it.
It's fantastic villain in it.
Toni Collette's in it. Vanessa Williams.
Excellent. Christian Bale.
Christian Bale's like sort of second lead in it, if you like.
Rich Ramsey popping up for good measure.
Well, yeah, because it's
because he's Shaft.
But of course, they play that up in the third film. Shaft is much more like his dad was, and his son's got a bit of that about him as well. So I don't think any of them are great films, even the original Shaft, actually. But all I'm saying is, you see Boys in the Hood, and you think this is going to be a filmmaker of significance, and what followed didn't really back that up. That's all. If you like his stuff, great. I'm not going to say everything he did is a train wreck. He's not Michael Bay or something. But, mind you, he's not Michael Bay in Success either. But, Too Fast, Too Furious is not what you would have expected from him at this stage of his career. It would be a bit like Tarantino just doing like a fucking Transformers spin-off or something.
In fact, it would be better if this was a Michael Bay film.
Because a few of the strange ticks in the action wouldn't be there. He can hang it together. I don't know. It's not. I mean, next week we've got Justin Lin, and I can't speak for Tokyo Drift without rewatching it, but there's no doubt we've got some better films to come under that guy. This was just so what all the way through, and it really jarred me that the character. How much does character work matter in action films? Well, this is telling me at least somewhat, because it really jarred that this wasn't the same Brian, and that Roman did seem like a hasty rewrite of a character they haven't really thought through yet, and Eva Mendes is just there as sort of Latin eye candy, largely because of where the film is. There's a lot of sort of Latino population there and stuff, Miami and stuff. The villain is really, really generic. People like Devon Aoki, I'm not saying she's a particularly great actress, but she's just there because she can start the race and look a bit pretty.
I did think like her and Eva Mendes were kind of, again, it was a little bit wasted, because I did think there was a little bit of something that, they had some screen presence. And I just
they did. Eva Mendes looked like she was going to be an enduring big star for a while. Certainly like 10 to 15 years ago. Well, probably for like Training Day onwards. She was in quite a lot of stuff. Quite a lot of fairly big films. I mean, not necessarily great films, but like Hitch was a fairly popular film at the sort of peak of Will Smith's popularity. And, I suppose Ghost Rider could have gone a very different way and stuff like that. Mind you, it's a Nick Cage film, what do you expect? I thought she was going to be a bigger star than she became, but she's definitely got some talent. I only realised recently she's with Ryan
Gosling.
Ryan Gosling in Life,
yeah. Didn't
know that. It's only reading around this film. I'm like, that rings a bell. I've read this before, but I'd forgotten all about it. There's room for like boys' films. It isn't about. Well, I said this last week. It's not about screen time necessarily, although that's part of it. It's not about having a distinct and separate plot for the women. It's not about the women getting together having some conversation unrelated to the men. It's not really any of those things. It's the fact that you've put them in and then you've really wasted them, and you've not Brian O'Connor's character falls for Mendes, or the character of Brian falls for Mendes' character, Monica, because she's there. She's in that position. We're not sold any chemistry or link between them. And that was the problem last week. But Brian...
It's like on paper, it's like you could have had, like, oh, you're undercover, oh, so was I at one point, and you have that...
Bond over that.
Instantly you have that something you can start a relationship over. But... that's never explored. I don't think he even mentions it.
But it was the same last week. He got involved with Dom's sister because he needed to, for the plot, he needed to get involved with Dom's sister. And I just think that's the story of the women in the earlier sections of this film. even Letty was badly served last week, and you would argue she hasn't been so badly through the series. There's perfectly, I mentioned the Shawshank Redemption last week. There's room for films with no bloody women in it. It's not a numbers game. It's not, well, why didn't she get more screen time? It's just the fact that you look at people like Eva Mendes who are a bit better than this, and you just think, why write them in if you really have no idea what to do with any of them?
Yeah.
I don't even remember the women in part 3, so we'll have to see when we get to Tokyo Drift, because I've only seen it once. And I can't remember how good Gal Gadot's character is in the later films either. It's the first time I saw her. And I know she's, her and Hana are a thing. But, yeah, they're just a bit wasted at this stage. That's all. I don't know what you guys think. Well, Becca's more or less said.
Yeah, I think the franchise itself is, of course, like, male targeted, really. So, it tends to focus more on the bro, dude aspect of it all. But, I think the series does improve with that element to a degree. But I think the real culprit of it all is basically bad and lazy script writing. Bad character design. I think bad character's a bad character, and when your two main leads are male, well, I think if you examined every other character, regardless of the female or male, outside of the two lead, I think they all sound a bit shit. So I think it's just bad.
It stands out
bad writing.
It stands out because there's fewer women. You're sort of saying,
Yeah.
and that in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing in what is a boys' film.
Yeah, yeah, kind of. I always think that, so when it comes to sort of these kind of things, like sort of not giving female characters enough to do, or being a bit generic and a bit crap, well, that's just bad, lazy writing at the end of the day, or just lazy.
Yeah, I just got mixed feelings on it because, like I say, I overall across the sort of breadth of Hollywood, I think representation is and should be a thing. But at the same time, I've already come up with examples of films that had no or few women in it, and it was perfectly understandable given what that film was. It does get better. It does get better than this. Character work generally gets a bit better than this. For all we joke about it, in later films where, we laugh at the whole "my family" thing, and it is kind of funny, but at the same time, it kind of lands its emotional beats in later weeks, as I recall, which means we must care something for these characters, which must mean, logically, they do better character work with what's coming.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot, but I think the heart shines through. Like, there's a little,
It's full of heart.
We're talking about the future films, but there is like a general. As you talk about, with Vin Diesel and Paul Walker, there is chemistry, and I think there is general sort of like a family friendship vibe go throughout the whole thing. It's like a big group gathering. Oh, everyone's getting together to do something, and we're having we're making something special, and it is about coming together and doing those films for them. If Vin Diesel was here, he'd probably say that. So that's why the family thing seems to resonate well, because it is the family getting together to make another Fast film, and that Fast film is about
and you
family.
do feel. They all give each other a bit of grief and shit talking on the set. In the films. I'm talking in character. But there's no doubt they have some feelings for each other. And the whole reason we started with the whole joking about them being in love last week was actually because I was slightly taken aback by the chemistry between them. I was slightly taken aback. There are ways it is shot that are a little bit almost unintentional, in that you go, that look was a bit too lingering, and I'm sure you didn't mean that, because those two aren't actually meant to be romantically interested in each other. But at the same time, they really played off each other very, very well. And I think the mixed feeling I've got on this is that they play off each other quite well here too as well. But it isn't the Brian we know. Roman won't be the same in future weeks, and in future weeks, Tej and Roman will have a sparkier, more comedic version of this. and Brian won't be bonded to them in quite the same way.
And you'll have better action.
And you'll have way better action because you've got a really, really good action director coming. Or arriving, or whatever. Yeah, but I mean, I don't think John Singleton's massively distinguished himself here. Who wrote this, Becca? Did you have that information? Did you give us that at the start? Who wrote this? Do you know?
I did. IMDb lists the writers as Gary Scott Thompson, Michael Brandt.
Okay, I don't know those. Okay, fair enough.
I'm not familiar with their other works.
Gary Scott Thompson wrote the first film.
Right.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
And that's far from a terrible. That's far from a terrible script.
Knight Rider. Oh my gosh.
Not which version of Knight Rider, but the reboot.
The TV, the remake.
That was shocking. I mean, the first one
that was really bad.
That well, but the reboot's really bad.
We'll see him again for Hobbs and Shaw.
Right. Hobbs and Shaw is.
Fast 8. Fast
You
7,
might enjoy. You might enjoy Hobbs and Shaw. I mean, if you like those two and you like the way they play off each other, you might enjoy it. I'm not. There are people whose opinion I respect who enjoyed Hobbs and Shaw. So I don't think it's fact, if there is such a thing with film appreciation, that it's awful. But I didn't like it, and it's a one joke film. It's 90 minutes of these two plain don't like each other. Well, it's not even 90 minutes. It's way longer than that. And it wears quite thin, and it's shot quite uninventively because the impression is that all you need to do is put those two facing each other and sparks will fly. So no real effort's put into it. And it's like they're taking in turns to do their like little skits of like shit talking each other. It was disappointing. I didn't expect it to be brilliant, but it wasn't as good as I expected. I thought Hobbs and Shaw would be a much more fun spin-off than it was.
No, I've still managed to avoid it, so
I'm
looking forward to it later on.
So yeah, final thoughts on this. I think I've more or less done mine. It's not where we're going yet. This is kind of the path not taken. This is kind of the do another Fast and Furious in a different city with a different crew every couple of years, and the street racing is where it's at. It really jars because the characters are just not this in what's coming. But I got through it. I think I probably had a better time with it than I did the first time I saw it. But yeah, boy, it's not very good.
Yeah, I think the film suffers pretty much of the time of it was made. You know, it was. I suppose in a way it kept the momentum, for lack of a better word. To keep
it keeps it alive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know.
But had they not
good
bothered,
money as well. It did more than the first film.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I think so. I'd need to check that, but I think it. I mean, it was more expensive than the first film, but I'll look it up while you talk because I will give you that in a minute.
But it's, I think it struggles with it being at the time. But had it been made, would we have got the Fast franchise? Would Tokyo Drift got made? You have to wonder these things. So if you like where the series went, you have to sort of think, well, maybe
this is the price you pay.
Yes, in a weird way, but in terms of how the Fast, when you think about the Fast and Furious, like how it started, this is probably like the most pure cliche version of what it was. Really,
This is what I thought I was avoiding.
Yes.
The years I wasn't going to see them, this is what I thought they were. The first one had a bit more heart than this. So the first one was not brilliant, but a little bit more than I thought. And this one is like bang on what I thought I was avoiding.
Yeah.
But as they say, if you want the rainbow, you've got to put up with the rain.
Mm-hmm.
And people say she's just a big pair of tits. Dolly Parton.
No, good old Dolly. Wisdom of Dolly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dolly Parton is an absolute treasure, though, isn't she? Really.
Yeah.
She's just legendary. I think no matter what you think of her, she's a legend.
why not? The Fast and the Furious.
I never thought we'd be mentioning Dolly Parton on this programme.
Right, the relatives, successes and budgets and stuff. This is twice the budget of the Fast and the Furious. The Fast and the Furious was 38. This was 76 million. This took a shade under 30 million more, so it's less profitable, but it took overall slightly more money.
And to quote Dolly Parton, you have to spend a lot of money to look this cheap.
It doesn't actually look more expensive than the first film.
Yeah,
you can see where it's all going in the cars, not on the screen.
But at least no one crashed their car while inattentively lusting after another man.
No.
Yeah. No wonder he went to the Chronicles of Riddick. It was probably just, there's too much chemistry, man. I can't stand it.
Too much
I'm going to go in out with Dame Judy.
The
problem is, though, I avoided this film, Chris. And I don't know much about it.
Oh, do you not?
No. But then, as Becca told us her final thoughts on this yet, to be fair.
Okay.
It's a film.
Okay.
Yes, she has. That was it. It's a film.
That's it.
Can you imagine, sort of Becca writing for, an established newspaper or, a magazine, do movie reviews, and you just get into it, and you're like, it's a film.
What I would love
it's a play.
if they made no adjustment for what she actually wrote. So they gave her, 4 columns in the newspaper, and when you open it, 2/3 of the page is blank, except for a headline and it's a film at the top.
I imagine that's probably what the likes of Kermode or those kind of really acerbic reviewers, or known for their kind of witty put downs, they would just write it's a film, or just don't one word reviews and then blue stars.
Although I keep meaning to have a word with Kermode, because I'd look at the reviews of the last Star Wars film the other day. And Kermode, I was just walking somewhere and I was listening to something that mentioned that film. So I called up Rotten Tomatoes and just saw what critics I know the names of thought of it. So I was scrolling through pages, and Kermode's on there twice because he's got an entry for his radio show and an entry for The Observer. And he's got one.
Are they different?
Yeah, they're different. One's rotten, one's fresh. And I felt like saying, you really weren't paying attention there, were you?
Make up your mind, Kermode.
Yeah. Unless he thought it was, he might say, well, it was bang on the cusp. So as I was writing 2, I gave him 1 of each. Don't know.
I suppose.
But it's one's rotten, one's fresh. I just went on about 3 pages. I'm like, there's Kermode. Hang on, he was rotten 2 pages
He's
ago.
changed his mind.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he's not really. I mean, I wouldn't sort of say a fan, but he's made it known a few times that he's kind of not a big kind of Star Wars nerd. He's not a big fan, and he does often change his opinion. When he goes and see the film on our first viewing, it might take him a while. He'll maybe see it again a couple of other times, and his opinion will change.
Possibly.
But
I mean, I was a Star Wars fan.
He did it with Greatest Showman, didn't he? Apparently.
What didn't like it, then did.
Yeah, he
changed his opinion.
He slated it, but because obviously it became a massive hit and quite popular with a lot of people.
He was like,
he sort of thought,
what am I missing?
Yeah, that forced him to change his opinion and see it again.
Yeah, so he saw it with an actual audience.
I liked it despite itself.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot wrong with The Greatest Showman, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't really, really enjoy it.
Yeah. Same here.
It's one of those films you can still have a good time with it, can't you? I mean, it's songs that are really uplifting. It's a great sing along. If you're feeling down, some of the tunes can really help lift you up. I mean, it's one of those things where you can have such a thing as a good time with a bad film.
Yeah, but it's not a film it's not a film I'd watch ironically either. It's not one of those that I'd go, this is shit, but I like it.
But
I'd watch it without cynicism.
Yeah.
But objectively, I don't know what I would do with it were I ever to have written a review for it, because I don't know. I'm not sure objectively it's that good, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's the weird thing is though, you enjoy it for the right reasons, which it's trying to do, but there's just other things in it that just go, yeah, it is a bit.
Well, that's true of the Fast franchise.
Yeah.
In that I avoided it for years and went in with a very unhealthy dose of snobbery about me. And tonight I've kind of ridiculed this a little bit, and it's been quite a short show because we just don't know what to say about this film. It's really thin. But when you get to Fast 5 and Fast 6, I'll have to pick flaws with it. I'll have to, because there's just stuff wrong with the films. But I don't watch them ironically. I don't. I like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they'll be fully aware. I mean, they might not admit it, but they're fully aware of the flaws within the film. They're just that doesn't matter. It's not what it's part of the series, isn't it? To be
Yeah.
You have to throw in at least a few stupid things in or contrivances just to kind of
I mean, my memory of 5, for example, is, I mean, I called it a Dom's Ocean's 11. I've got to quit doing that. I think it's got a dumber tone. I think the actual plot's not particularly dumb at all. But certainly when you get to the end of 6, I mean, somebody on set must have known that was a 30-mile runway.
Yeah,
Do you know
surely.
what I mean? Somebody must have, and they were like, oh, it's all part of the fun.
We won't mention that. It's fine.
But the sequence is actually really well done. It's only when you start going, how long's this bloody runway? I think it's...
So anyone kind of look into it
we haven't
with
decided.
reality.
We haven't decided, and we won't do it here because we won't do it on here. But we haven't decided if we're doing a commentary yet. But it does spring to mind that, like, commentating on that might be a bit of a giggle. But then I suppose you have them being chased by, like, a submarine in the 8th film and vehicular warfare in downtown. You know, there's plenty to laugh at in all of them, really. But anyway, I say that like I know what I'm talking about, Chris. Do you find your knowledge of the series appropriate for the sort of gravitas we're giving these reviews?
I'm lacking in facts.
I'm lacking in facts because this film is crap, so I've avoided it. And I've only seen it once, so all I could remember was bro and loving looks. So I feel a bit embarrassed that we've invoked, well-known great critics like Ebert and Kermode, and here we are, so lacking in knowledge, putting this out as what we think. It's a bit embarrassing, really, Chris.
Yeah, if only we had Becca to provide us with facts.
Yeah, well, she disappeared from the call briefly earlier. I suspect she went on a fact-finding
mission.
Fact-finding mission.
Yes. Becca, did you use your time safely and with social distancing, but informatively? A bit like Gandalf at the start of Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh gosh. I found some facts, but whether or not they'll be fun, I don't know. But yeah, as you're talking about the box office takings of the first 3 Fast and Furious films, the second one made the most of the box office, around like 236 million. I think I may need to adjust that figure. That's quite interesting.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, roughly in there somewhere. But I think it's quite interesting, it being like despite being the least well received, it made the most money. I just think that's quite an interesting contrast.
Of the first 2.
Of the first 2 films, sorry, even and even of the third one as well, but I'm not too sure.
We'll find out when we
find out next week.
I haven't done any work on the third one yet at all. What I will say is, in Rotten Tomatoes terms, this is not the lowest rated of the series, but we'll get to it.
Oh, okay.
It surprised me.
In terms of like critical reception.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I had a look at like the critic score the other day, which is the only one that interests me. I don't give a shit about audience score simply because it's too easy to.
No, it's top critics only.
Well, not only that, not only is it, who are the people that are voting, but also it's too easy to like frig with and spam and stuff like that. At least with a critic score, you're comparing somewhat with even though the numbers have increased over the years. This film came out in the internet era and the online bloggers era, so the mix of reviewers on there would be somewhat similar to now. And it's not the lowest rating. I think it's the second lowest rating, but we'll get to it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's a fun fact as well.
I was surprised, but we'll get to it.
It's not really what kind of is a fact, but I think it's quite interesting that the Fast and Furious movies and X-Men movies are often released together. There's that's a franchise that I do enjoy. Obviously, X-Men 2 and Fast 2 both came out in 2003. Last Stand and X-Men Last Stand and Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift obviously came out in 2006.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting. Obviously, it took a break when Paul Walker died. But then we've seen that recently, as in a couple of years ago, release of the Logan movie and also Dark Phoenix released at the same time. I just think it's quite interesting.
It wasn't a long gap because 7 was supposed to come out 12 months after 6.
It was.
So it only put another year on it, which is kind of the gap they'd had on the previous couple anyway.
Yeah. It wasn't like a massive gap.
We will take care to have a little bit of a read around 3 because obviously the end product is very, very compromised, and also an awful lot of the scenes with Paul Walker in it aren't, or they're digitally manipulated, or it places him in a certain chair he wasn't sat in and things like that.
No, it just looks a bit odd.
It's fairly seamless for the most part. There's a few bits, particularly at the end where he's playing on the beach with his kid. You can tell that's not him.
I remember watching that actually and thinking,
Yeah, well, they used his brothers, who all look somewhat like him, and I think they did digital face replacement. The last shot of him and Dom looking at each other across the two cars, that's not real either. That's
you can kind of tell it's not really him.
That doesn't look. It sort of doesn't look right. Sort of.
Looks a bit kind of iffy.
Right, yeah, I felt sorry for James Wan because he came in to put his stamp on the series, and he basically had to rescue a dumpster fire.
Yeah, but he did try, and he's a respected filmmaker. So
we'll talk about it. We'll talk about Seven.
Eventually, to talk about his legacy on the series as well.
I think, with the exception of Hobbs and Shaw, the worst of what we're going to deal with is probably the next week or two, and then they start to get better.
They improve slightly.
Yeah.
Oh dear. And then moving on, fun fact number 3 about not Holly Valance. Devon Aoki. Comes from a famous family, I didn't realise. Also, she's known as like a singer, an actress, and a model as well. Her father is actually Rocky Aoki, who founded the Benihana restaurant chain. And her brother is none other than DJ, producer, and music executive Steve Aoki, which I didn't realise.
I know Steve Aoki.
Yeah, I know obviously who he is, but I didn't put two and two together. I was like, oh, right. So that's pretty cool. So obviously from a famous family. Not really a fact from fact number 4. This could be a reason behind some of the iffy dialogue. Obviously, John Singleton encouraged the actors to kind of ad-lib and just kind of improvise during,
and all they could come
with
up,
a lot of the scripts. So
all they could come up with was bro. Say what you like. Bro.
Bro at the end.
If this was like, if this was made like 10 years earlier, it would have been dude.
It really would have been dude, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Everything would have been like this dude, that.
Oh, it's really bad. I'm not convinced. I don't think most actors are that good at improv.
Unless you're a stand-up.
Yeah, I mean, it works for Curb Your Enthusiasm, doesn't it? But, anyway.
My final fun fact is that Verone's mansion was once owned by none other than Sylvester Stallone, which I think is pretty cool.
Oh, right.
That's quite neat. I didn't realise that.
Oh, that's his house?
Yeah, apparently he used to own that house.
Oh, he used to? Okay.
I don't know if he still does or who it's owned by now.
I mean,
I thought it might be a connection to when we did the Rocky series.
I've no reason to care about this, so I'm a bit embarrassed to admit this. But my first thought was, I wonder if it was one he shagged Bridget Nielsen in.
Probably.
Right? And I don't care. I don't fancy Bridget Nielsen. They were married for 5 minutes anyway. It's just why that occurred to me. I've no idea. But anyway,
probably.
That's interesting.
It seems like the sort of place he would.
It might have been in the sales brochure.
Maybe.
Imagine that if you buy a house in, like now, next time Ben Affleck sells a house or something, he'll be like, I did Ana de Armas there. Or, if you want something a bit more traditional, I still own this one that I did Jennifer Garner in. Something with a more Latin theme, I did, It's an idea.
It's a nice idea.
It's a nice idea. Anyway, as for social media, you can find me at ThePastyKid1976 on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at Cinema Talks. You can also find all the old episodes. After I paused, I went, all the old... Yeah,
all of them.
You can find all the old episodes on the website cinematalks.co.uk.
And you can find us on Twitter at ExpectUsTalk. You can also drop us an email, expectustalk@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube and also Podchaser, Podbean, Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you are likely to find a podcast, you'll find us there.
I was just thinking, is that true? Yeah, it's largely true. I think
largely true, yeah, for the most part anyway. So
we're most places anyway. But I think the only place you wouldn't find us is SoundCloud.
So, yeah, that's the only place we're not at the moment.
Yeah, and to be honest, after 5 years, you can be fucked.
No,
so.
I haven't begun to explore SoundCloud just yet. So, but mainly kind of iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Let's get out of the habit of saying iTunes. Yeah, certainly.
I really hope this series kind of goes in the direction of something that feels a bit direct to DVD and stars someone I've never heard of.
Well, you're in luck.
Which means Becca.
Do you expect Talk will return with Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift?